So today we want to kick off with permissions. We are going to do a lot of things. So we'll start with permissions. Now, I think the last session we did, we looked at operations masters, and we said that there are 5 operations masters role and then they are subdivided into forest and then domain-wide operations masters. And then we looked at how to move them from one system to the other. Then, so today we want to talk about permissions. Yes, you have set up Active Directory. So what does it mean? So one of the things that you would want to do is you would want to control how things are accessed on your network. And you can actually achieve this through permissions. And so what are permissions? So basically, every object on a network has a set of access control information that comes with it. And these are known as security descriptors. And they control the type of access allowed to users and groups. So the security descriptor is automatically created along with the container or object that is created. So whenever you create anything in the server environment or in a work environment, automatically oh, Abdurrahman, I am very good. Yourself? All right. So every object that you create automatically comes with a folder, comes with a security descriptor that defines who can access it and what they can do with it. So permissions are defined within an object security descriptor. So the security descriptor is going to contain the names of those who can open it and then what they can do with it. Permissions are associated with or assigned to specific users and groups. For example, if we create a template called file.dat, the built-in administrators from the group might be assigned read, write, and delete permissions, whilst the backup operators might be assigned read and write permissions only. But at the end of the day, when you create any file, you will have to decide what kind of permission that you are going to assign to it. Now, when it comes to permissions, we have explicit permissions and then we have inherited permissions. So when we say explicit permissions, those are the permissions that we define. Are we okay? We define. So we decide what permission should happen. That is explicit permission. So they are those that are set by default on non-child objects when the object is created or by user action on non-child parent or child objects. So explicit permissions are permissions that you create. Then we have what we call inherited permissions. Inherited permissions are basically those permissions that are propagated from a parent object to a child object. So by virtue of the fact that if you create a folder and you create a subfolder in it, if you do not change how the folder is created, automatically the subfolder is going to inherit the permission of the parent folder. This means that whoever has access to the parent folder will automatically be allowed to also access the child folder. So by default, objects within a container inherit the permissions from that container when the object is created. So when you create a folder, just as I cited, and you create a subfolder in it, automatically the subfolder will inherit the permissions of the parent folder. Then besides that, we also have NTFS permissions and then we have share permissions. So whether it is explicit permission an inherited permission, it will either be a share or an NTFS permission. So when we say share permissions, they are independent in the sense that neither changes the other. So when you have systems that are using older operating systems or systems that run older file systems like FAT32, then they are going to use the share permission. But as a matter of fact, whenever you are creating any folder, you actually need to specify both the share permission and the NTFS permission. I think the share permission defines who can access the file on the local system. Then the NTFS permission defines who can access the file at the network level. So that is something that you need to take, you need to be mindful of when you are creating file shares. And mostly the more restrictive permissions are applied. So if, for example, I have an NTFS permission that says I have full control, but the share permission says I only have read, then at the end of the day, the read is what is going to take effect and not the full control that I have. So again, when you are creating the permissions, you need to decide how you want the permission to be. You can decide to allow the more flexible permission at the share level and then be restrictive at the NTFS level. It all depends on how you try to create it. But mostly when we create folders, we forget the share permission exists. And so we try to troubleshoot issues at the NTFS level. And sometimes you check and check, you're trying to access the file, it tells you can't access, you check, you have full control, but then you still can't access it. All right, so with this, let's go straight forward to actually doing it. Usually I would have attached another storage to the existing servers, but in order not to weigh down on our resources, we wouldn't go through that. But if you need to go through that, I will share a link to a video that you can use to see how you can attach extra storage to your system. Well, let's just do it. I mean, it doesn't spoil anything. So let's just do it. Let's attach another storage so that will become our shared storage rather than trying to deal with the files directly on the desktop or in the documents. So we'll be working with only this one and the client. We'll be working with this one and the client for now. So what I'll do is that I'll go to the settings of DC1, edit virtual machine. And then what I'll do is, okay, because it is paused, that is why I don't have the option to add. So let me power it on first. It's on now. So let me go back to the settings and then see if I can actually, yes, so I can add a component. So I want to add a hard disk. I want to add a hard disk. So I'll click next. And then, well, it has to be SCSI. That's what they're recommending for us. So we'll click next. And then we can create a new virtual disk or use an existing disk. I don't think we have an existing disk. So we'll go with create a new virtual disk and then click next. So again, 60 gig, that's okay. Don't worry. Now we know it's not going to, but then we are going to store it as a single file. And we're not going to allocate the entire disk space now. So we'll create a small size. And as and when we use it, it will increase the size. So from here, I'll click next. And then I'll call this DC1 storage. DC1 storage. That's how I want to call it. And then I'll click finish. So once this is done, I'll click OK. So you can see that now I have two hard drives. I have two hard drives here. So I just click OK. And then we will just have to, the device can be connected to this virtual machine using the status bar on the VM, I just click OK. I'm hoping that what we didn't read will not come back and bite us. So I'll just log in. let's go full screen mode, and then I'll log in. All right. So let me close this. And I know you are expecting to see the drive here, but we are not going to see the drive here because when you assign or attach a drive, at the end of the day, the drive is blank in the sense that it is unallocated, it doesn't have a file system and all that. And so you need to prep the drive so that it can be used. So I'll go to tools, and then we'll go to computer management. And then from here, we'll come to disk management. So you can see that our disk has been inserted here, disk 1, and this red means that it is offline. So a drive can be offline or online. So it's currently offline. So one of the first things that we have to do is we have to bring the drive online. And after bringing it online, we'll have to initialize it. And after initializing it, we can now put a file system on it. So the file system is basically a way that the operating system organizes files. And in Windows environment, we have FAT, FAT32, FAT16, NTFS, and then we have REFS. REFS stands for Resilient File System, and it's actually one of the new file systems out there. And then you have to choose a partitioning style. When it comes to the partitioning style, in Windows environment, we have MBR and then we have GPT. MBR, Master Boot Record, is an old partitioning style, and it only supports up to 4 terabytes of storage. So if you have a drive that is more than 4 terabytes, it will not be able to format it. And then I think GPT it has up to 128, I think 128. And then with the MBR, you can have up to only 4 partitions. I'm saying this off head, I may be wrong, but I think that it's not far from it. So I'll first put the drive online by right-clicking. So I put the drive online. And then after putting the drive online, it says the drive is not initialized. So this time around, we will right-click again and select what's initialized. So it says that we want to initialize it. What partitioning style do we want to use? Is it MBR or GPT? So we can go with MBR, we can go with GPT. And I think one of the differences between MBR and GPT is that the MBR stores the boot files and then the other partitions all together. So at the end of the day, when the boot sector corrupts, you can't access the rest of the partitions. But then the GPT stores the boot sector as a separate file. So at the end of the day, even if the boot sector gets corrupt, you can still be able to access the files on the system. So that is one of the reasons why you may want to choose a particular file partitioning style over the other. So we'll still go with MBR, and then we just click OK. So now the drive is online, and then the drive has been initialized. So I think we can just use this opportunity to look at something very interesting. So, when it comes to storage management, we have something we call RAID, redundant array of independent disks, or redundant array of inexpensive disk. And this is kind of a security feature that is used to ensure availability of systems, even when one of the storage components fail. So we have RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 2, RAID 3, RAID 4, RAID 5. There are higher RAID levels, okay? But I think in the Windows environment, the default is up to RAID 5. So when we say RAID, but you can create a simple volume. Now, the difference between a disk and a volume is that the disk is the physical device, and then the volume is the space that you create on it. So we have what we call a new simple volume. A simple volume basically allows you to use the entire storage space as your volume. Then you have the spanned volume. Now, there may be situations where you need more storage, but then the drives you have do not have that storage. Let's say we need 1 terabyte, but then we have 2 drives that are 50-50 each. Are we okay? That are 50-50 each, but we need a bigger space. What we can do is that we can take space from the 2 storages and combine them so we can get a bigger space. So that's what the span volume is. It allows you to add spaces from different drives. So for example, they are all grayed out because most of them requires at least 2 storage. Some requires 2 drives to do that. So if, for example, I come to this drive C here, one of the things that we can do is we can shrink the volume. So I can borrow some space from the drive C here so that I can create an unallocated space. So I can say that let's make it 35,000. 35,000. So we want to have about 25,000 of free space. And then just shrink. The size after shrink, no, so let's make it 30,000. So 30,000, so shrink. So after shrinking, I have an unallocated space here. So now when I right click this, you see that some of the options are now active. So I can create a span volume that will combine the free space here and then some of the free space on the disk one together so that I can have that size. So when I select span volume, new span volume and click next. So with span volume, the sizes have to be the same. The sizes have to be the same. So it's picking 29,000 from disk one and then also 9,000 from the other one. Select the disk you want to use. So I can select this, but let me say remove. So it's 0. So it's picking disk 0, but I don't know why it's not picking the, I think because the size is not the same. So let me strip this one also. Let me strip this one, or let me shrink this one also, sorry. But we first need to create a volume on it. So let me create new span volume. Next. You see, it's not picking the other disk because the size is not the same. But if you go to, let's say, new stripped volume, and then I click next, this also is not finding the other one. So what I'll do is this. Let me first create a new simple volume here. Click next, next, and then assign the drive letter E. So it's going to have a drive letter called drive letter E, and then we'll click finish. So when we come here, now our drive is ready to be used. You can see our drive here. And then our 60 gig is now also showing just 30 gig because of the space that was left. So I'm going to shrink this, shrink volume, and then I'll shrink 30,000. Enter the amount of space to shrink. This 3,000, right? So I have to add another 0. So 30,000. Yes. Shrink. All right. So I think we have this size here, we have this size here. So now let me see if we can get the new span volume. And that will combine the two. It's still not picking. Why is this not picking? Okay, I think I know why. You see, the first volume we created is an NVMe drive and not as, what's the name? Not a SCSI drive. So you can't do that across. I think that is the reason why. So let me go back here and then extend the volume to put the volume back and then add another drive. That would be a SCSI drive so that we can just see. So this one, I've put the storage back together. So I'm going to quickly add one more storage just to give us that feel of having, so I'll come back to add. And then hard disk. Next. So it's going to be SCSI. And so we'll just click next. Create new virtual hard disk. Same 60. Store it as a single file. Next. I'll just leave the name as is. And then we'll click OK. All right. So this is also here. So you can see that the next drive has been added. So I'll just right click this, put it online. Initialize, I think the first one was MBR, so this two will be MBR. And then let me delete the volume that is on it. Yes. So that at least we have two raw drives. So if I go to new spanned volume, next, you can see that the disk2 is also showing. You can see that the disk2 is also showing. So I can just click this and then add it, and then we will have 120. Are we okay? We will have 122,000. This will be the total space. So when I click next, and they are all going to be called drive E, I click next, and then I'm going to format it using NTFS. You can also use the resilient file system, REFS. But I'm going to use NTFS, and then we'll click next, and then finish. It says the operation you have selected will convert the selected disk from basic disk to dynamic, because it's changing to dynamic disk because the size of the drive can change. So I just click yes. And then you can see that it has been assigned a different color, which is expand volume. And when I come here, okay, I think it's still running. So let's give it a little time. It's now being formatted. It's now being formatted. So when the formatting is done, and then we go in, you are going to see that we're going to have one drive there, which is 120 gig. And then it will just be sitting there like that, smiling at us. But at the bank, it's actually two different drives that have been combined to create that one drive. So I know somebody will ask, so when you put data, where does it write? So one thing about spanned volume is that if one of them fails, you may lose data, because the purpose is for you to have more storage space, not necessarily for redundancy. If you want redundancy, then you would rather want to create what we call the mirrored volume. The mirrored volume allows you to mirror whatever is on one drive onto the other. So even if one of the systems goes off, the other will still be there. So you can see we have a drive here now, which is 120 gig. But in actual sense, it's just two different drives that have been put together. But in the front end, it's showing that we have this. So you can do whatever you want to do with your drives. So long as you have them, you can delete the volume again. And when you delete on one, you delete on all of them, because it is one drive that has been put together. If you want to create a mirrored volume, you can create a mirrored volume. And the new mirrored volume, click next. And with the mirrored volume, if I add this also to it, and then say finish, next and finish, it will create a mirrored volume, but you are not going to see 120 gig. You only see 60 gig, one of them. And even if you take one of them offline, the other one is still going to be there. So that is the thing about the mirrored volume. So you can remove one from the mirror, and then the other will be there. Whatever data you put in one, that data will be available on the other. So let it finish formatting, and then we can try. We can put a folder in it, and automatically that folder is going to be in all two of them. And if we remove one from the mirror, the other one will still be there, and then we won't lose the data. So if you want to have a storage solution that will help for you not to lose data, that is what you go for. You can go for the mirrored volume, but then that one also takes a little time. Any question?
When you create a mirrored volume, right, and then you put one offline, one drive offline, one disk offline, does it
I can't hear you. Please speak up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, if you create a mirrored volume,
yeah,
yes, and you put one disk offline,
yeah,
does it still have that redundant effect?
So if you put one offline and then you put other data on the one that is online, remember that one is offline, so it's no longer part of the mirror.
Okay.
Do you get it?
Yeah, so it can't really, when you put it on when you put data on the online one, it will not transfer it to the.
So you can see that we only have one here, right? So if I decide to create a new folder. Let's call it file. I create this folder. It's on automatically. This has been put on all the 2 drives, and as you don't even know which of them is here at any point in time. So if I decide to right click this and say break remove mirror or break the mirrored volume, you can remove the mirror. You can, so I can say what, remove mirror or break the mirrored volume. Let's say remove mirror. So it says, so removing a mirror from this volume removes 1 copy of the volume's data. The volume will no longer contain redundant what data. Select a disk from, so just as I mentioned, once you remove it, it will have whatever it has now. But if you add others, it's not going to get it. We good?
So right now, if you remove the other disk from it,
Please
and
speak
then
up.
I mean, can you hear me now? Okay, so right now, for instance, you remove 1 mirror, right?
One.
And then 1 disk is off.
Oh,
Yes, and 1 disk is out now. When you
yeah.
create a new volume, I mean a new mirror, when you create a new mirror, does the data still remain redundant on the new mirror?
Let's say so we've removed this, right? So it's back
Yes.
to what we said. Are we okay?
Yeah.
So when I right click here and say add mirror, because it's still a mirror something. So I can add this one back to it and say add mirror, yes. And then let's give it a little time, and it's going to become a mirror. So you see resyncing. So we'll try to resynchronize
Okay,
again.
okay.
Comes back. Obroni, why are you?
I tell you.
So what it means is that if one of the drives fail and then you remove it and then you bring a new drive and then you add it to the mirror, automatically will resynchronize.
I think that answers my question.
Okay, that is great.
So I want to ask, so if you put files on the first drive, let's say the drive E, and probably it gets full, would it affect the other drive? Or both get
All of
full
them
at
will be,
this time?
once it's finished, all of them are full.
Oh, okay.
You get it? Once
Okay.
one is full, it means that all of them are full.
That was full. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so Lou, with the mirrored drive, they all have to automatically have the same size, right?
Yes, they all have to have the same size. I think even with the stripped volume and all the others, they must have the same size. Please, are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So if you do the stripped volume, it's the same thing. The only difference is how the data is stored on them. So with the stripped volume, the system will write data across the 2 drives. So you write part of the data on one of the drive and part of the data on the other drive. This allows for fast, if you want speed, stripped volume is fast, but then it is not redundant. That is why RAID 1 is there, which is the mirrored volume. Then there's RAID 3. RAID 3 is stripping with parity. Stripping with parity. Stripping with parity basically means, yeah, you require 3 drives to actually do that. Stripping with parity means that you will have the drives behave like the RAID 1 and RAID 0, which will be stripping, writing data across the drives. Then the third drive will store parity information, which is basically data that can be used to reconstruct the data on the 2 drives if anything happens to one of the drives. So that is stripping with parity. Then RAID 5 also uses stripping with parity, but then this one, the parity information is spread across the drives. The parity information is spread across the drives. So if you have 3 drives, named A, B, C, the parity information of A may be on C, that of B may be on A, that of C may be on B. So that is how that one works. Basically, they've already done it. You can't see with your eyes, but once you put data on it, and that is the option that has been set, automatically it works just like that. We good? Can I proceed?
Sure.
So I think we have done some small storage management. So that's just because I needed to ensure that we can create files on the storage instead of directly on the desktop. All right. So back here, we are going to create a folder structure. You know, most of the time in organizations, we may have a folder called general for the entire organization. And then within this general, we may have folder for each department in there. So you can do that. Are we okay? You can do that. So we can create a folder. Okay. So this folder, I'm going to rename this folder. I'm going to call it general. Okay. Then in this general, I'm going to create another folder for IT. And then create another folder for HR. And then another folder for finance. And then the last one for marketing. And this also requires planning. Are we okay? This also requires planning. But once you have planned your Active Directory, you shouldn't have an issue with this one, because you are going to actually bring down how you planned your Active Directory here, with the exception of places where you may have some people being managers and then all of that. But apart from that, once you understand the environment, you can really plan this and then make it happen. So what I want to do is, we have created this. Now within finance, we are going to create other folders in here. Finance, what was the structure of finance? Active Directory users and computers. So when I expand this and then I go to finance, we have when I go to the rows, we have credit, accounts, and then payroll. So I'm going to create other subfolders in here. New folder. So this one will be called credit, for the credit unit. This one will be called payroll, for the payroll unit. And then this one will be called, what's the other one?
Accounts.
Accounts. All right. So we come. All right. So in HR, we had what and what? HR, we have
training and staffing.
Yeah. So we have training, and then staffing. All right.
No,
Then,
change the credits. Sorry, you made a mistake. Let's go back. The training, you rather rename it for staffing. Yes. Okay, yes.
All right. Then we go to IT. I think IT from DOS. IT, what do we have? I know we have applications, right?
Systems.
Rename. Systems. Cyber. Yeah, cyber and database.
Database.
All right. Then we come to marketing. Marketing, we have sales, right? So marketing, we have sales, and then what? Okay. So we have R&D, sales and branding. All right, but this is not like an exhaustive structure. Are we okay? You can actually do it anyhow. You just need to make sure that you don't put yourself in a situation where you'll be hurt. So we have this general folder. We want to make sure that everyone in the organization can access this. Are we okay? So we are going to share it so that people can have access to it. So I'll right click this and I'll go to properties. And then I'll go to sharing. And then advanced sharing. So when I go to advanced sharing, I want to share this folder. And you can see the limited number of users is 16,777,000 and then 216. And they got this basically from the fact that if you have a class A IP address and then you want the users to be able to, if you have a class A network and indeed you have 16 million people on the network, they should all be able to access it. You can limit the size to maybe 10 people, depending on the number of people in the department. Then we have the permission. We also have caching. Basically, caching allows you to enable what we call offline files so that the system, whoever accesses the file, an offline version will be cached on the person's system. Maybe the person needs to work at home. So when he connects in the future, the file will synchronize. But you have to be careful, especially if you have multiple people working on different things, and then maybe everyone has gone to do something different, and then they all come and then synchronizes. One person's own overwrites the other person's own. So you need to be careful when you are dealing with caching. But we go to permissions. So the permissions that you are setting here is what we call the share permissions. So you can see we have share permissions. Now, under no circumstance do you want everyone to be able to have access to your files. Everyone means everyone, whether the person is on your network or not on your network, everyone. So the first thing you would want to do is to remove everyone. Then you want to add authenticated users. So you can just type a bit and then check. So you want authenticated users and click OK. So authenticated users means those who log in with username and password for your domain. So those who have been authenticated by your domain. And the next thing we want to do is we want to add change so that people can copy and move things around in there, but we don't want them to have full control. Then we will click apply. Okay, but this is not the end, because if you leave it like this and then you apply and click OK and you close this, you have shared it all right, but the user on the network will not be able to access the file. So you have to now go to the security settings. So this is where you actually allow authenticated, your domain user. So you can see we have users, which is basically any user from the organization can have access to this. So we want to edit this. And then first we want to remove the users. It says you can't remove users because this object is okay. It is inheriting from the parent folder. That is fine. That is fine. So it means that what we'll have to do is we'll have to go back to the parent folder and go and disable inheritance, which is long journey. So what we will do is we'll click advanced. And then when we come here, we want to disable inherited permissions. We want to disable inheritance so that it's not everyone who has access to the parent folder can have access to the child folder. Are we okay? So we just say what? Disable inheritance. Then what do you want to do? So we want to rather convert the inherited permissions to explicit permissions so that we can edit it. We want to disable the inherited convert the inherited permissions to explicit permissions so that we can edit it. If we remove all inherited permissions and we apply, even the administrator will not be able to access the file. So you convert the inherited permissions to explicit permissions. You click OK. And then that has been applied. So now we can edit it. So now when I go to edit, I can actually remove this and then they will be removed. Then I want to go back to add. I want to add, no, let's do this through the advanced. So I'm going to click OK here and go to advanced. I want to add another user. So select a principal. I want to add the authenticated users again. Authenticated users. Okay. And then click OK. But what do I want this to apply to? It says applies to this folder, subfolders, and files. Now, here you have to be careful, because if you leave this part unchecked, that this applies to folders, subfolders, and files, what you are doing is that everyone will be able to access every folder. So yes, we want everyone to be able to access the general, but we don't want somebody from IT to open finance. We don't want somebody from finance to open HR. We don't want somebody from wherever it is to open the other. So what you will do is you come down and say what? This folder only. Are we okay? You say this folder only. And then you want to give them read, write, and that's all. You don't even, sometimes you don't even want them to put anything in the folder, because you may have people saving their work in the general folder rather than putting it in their actual folders. All right, so just click OK. So we've added authenticated users. You click apply and then OK. And then we close. So with what we have done, we are saying that everyone can open general, but only if we would want only finance people to be able to open finance. So what I want to do is, I'm hoping my network does not disconnect. I'm going to try to introduce the client machine. All right. I'd wanted us to check to make sure that he can access all the folders, but I think it's taking some time. So let's make good use of the time and then, oh, I thought I did this thing the last time. All right, so whilst Microsoft is having important thing to do, let's just come back here. So basically, whatever we did for the parent folder is the same process we are going to do for the rest of the folders. So I'm going to take IT, and then I'm going to right click IT, and then we'll go to properties. Sharing, I think it has already been shared. Are we okay? So we just want to go to security, and then we want to go to advanced, and we want to again add, and then select a principal. So here we want to add, remember we created a group called IT, and then we added all the subgroups in IT to that particular group. This is the reason why. So we have a folder that all the people in IT can access, okay? But here also, we want it to be this folder only. And then click OK. They can just read in it, that's all. And then, so you can see we have the share permission. So the share permission is here. And then auditing, you can enable auditing to see whether someone actually tries to open the file when the person is not allowed to open the file. And then we have the effective permission. Effective permission is the addition of the share permission and then the NTFS permission to see what permission actually applies to the user. So when I click OK, and then I go back there, I should now see the effective permission. So include group. So effective permission, I can select a user and then I can see what kind of permission applies to the user or the device to see what kind of permission applies to the user that connects to that particular device. So again, I'm going to go within the IT. And then I want to make sure only applications guys can access application, only cyber guys can access cyber, only database guys can access database, only systems guys can access systems. So this is basically as from any good system administrator should be able to share files like this to make sure that there's no data spillage and someone from a different department does not get access to files in any location that does not concern them. So now when I come back to security, I just want to click advanced and I want to add. So here I want to select a principal and I'm selecting applications. Check names, no user or how do we call them? Apps, right? Okay, yeah, we call them apps. So we click OK. Now, because this is their main folder where they are going to be working, we want to give them modify so that they can put things in there. And we want this to apply to subfolders and all that, so they can create subfolders and all that. And you know, these are not the only permissions. We actually have advanced permissions, which is more. And it's showing you at a granular level what the person can do with those permissions that you have given the person. So I'm just going to show the basic and then we'll click OK. And then apply. Okay. So I'm going to do this for all the others and make sure the people from that particular department are those that are capable of accessing the particular folder for that particular department. So I think I'll just click edit and then add, because from here, we just want to say they can do this. We don't need to go to the advanced level. Okay. And I'll do this for the database also. Property, security, edit, add. So database, okay. Apply, okay. All right. And then we'll do this for systems also. Edit. At least today the network has been good to us. So we have systems.
I was about asking you which network are you on today?
I don't know.
I don't know.
All right. So we click OK. And then, okay. So that is how you share files on the network. Basically, that is how you share files on the network. So what we want to do is this. We want to come back here and see. So we can say join domain instead, straightforward. But we can't join the domain because the IP settings is not okay. Are we okay? But this should be able to allow us to go direct. Let me click next and see. Okay, join domain instead. Let's see if it's possible. Or even better, use an. So let me see if this will work. I'm doubting though, because Elgenfi, right? Or let me see, Maverick. // I doubt if it will work. Username.
But just the name, the username is requesting for the PC.
Okay, okay, if it's just the
Yeah,
username,
just the name.
I'm sure then it will now ask for the domain.
Okay. Password.
Create a super memorable password, really? No, then I don't have to use the urgent fee. You get it? Because there's going to be that conflict.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just going to go back and use Luis for the name.
Okay.
All right. So it says security question 1 of 1. What is your first pet name? I've never had a pet. Oh. What's the name of the city where you were born? What's our crime, y'all? Security question 2. What's the name of the first school you attended?
St. Peter's. Okay.
All right. And then the last one. Name of your oldest cousin. Let's put Bella. Next. Just a moment. Okay, so I don't think this is the domain. So it's giving us local account. And when we are done and we log in, you do more. I'll say, no. I don't want anything to waste our time.
Okay.
Get help from digital assistant. Cortana, no. If not, when she starts talking, have to accept. All right, so I think from here, then we will now actually go to the domain. So it's a good thing we didn't put that name there.
Yeah.
So let's give it a little time. For this one, we just have to wait for it because we need this one to be able to proceed to the next things that we want to do. At least we need to know whether what we have done works.
So meaning we are going to use this client to access the domain for those items in the DC1.
We are going to join the client to the domain.
Okay.
So for any system to be controlled by the servers, you need to register that system in the domain.
Okay.
But
Okay.
once you register it in the domain, we say you join it to the domain.
Okay.
We get.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you join it to the domain. And once you join it to the domain, it becomes part of the domain. From there, the domain controller can control it.
Okay.
Whatever policy you set on the domain controller will take effect on the client also.
The client machine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Microsoft says we should leave everything to them, so we've left everything to them. All right, so we're almost there.
It's there.
All right, so we are in. So again, because this is a new system, first things first, as it stands now, I doubt if you can ping the domain from here, even though it has internet access. But if you ping maverick.local and you hit enter, it's not going to work because this system does not know it. So we have to make sure that this system knows the Maverick. So we are going to assign, we are going to change the DNS and point the DNS to our server because our server is a DNS. But let's check if it can ping the IP. So ping 192.168.19.12. Is it 128 or 129? Okay, it's able to reach it. it's able to reach it. Are we okay? So the IP works, but the name does not work. But we don't use IP to join domain. It is the name we use to join the domain. So we have to make sure that the system has proper DNS. So I'll just go to Network and Sharing Center. And when I come to the Ethernet and I click details, I'm okay with the IP address it has. I just want to change the DNS details. So I'll go to properties and then IP version 4 properties. So we want to change just the DNS, we won't touch the IP. So 192.168.19.128. That's all. This is all that we want to do. So we just click close and then give it a little time. I think we are good. So now we can try pinging again. CMD ping maverick.local and then hit enter. Okay, so you see what the problem is. It is trying to reach maverick.local on the 129, and I think 129 is our DC2, which is off. But when we try it again, it now accessed the 128. So because it couldn't reach the 129, this time around the 128 worked. So yeah. So the maverick.local guys, a moment. All right. So the next thing I want to do is when we go to the settings of this machine, when we go to the settings of this machine and then we go to the home, let's come here. When I right click this PC and go to properties, which I know is going to take me back to the settings. All right, so at least the old one came. So you can see that the computer name is different. We don't want this in our environment. So we want to change this. And then, so we want to change the name. So we'll call this MV-CL1. MV-CL1. Or again, you can do your naming structure based on how you plan it. So let's say this machine belongs to somebody in the cyber department. Then we can do MV representing the company and then do CY representing cyber. So we can do MV CY maybe 01. So this is the first machine in the cyber department. Are we okay? MV C101. And we can actually even now put it directly on the domain straight from here also. But sometimes you may get an error, but then it will work. So we'll just say maverick.local and then click OK. So we want to change the name and also put it on the domain. So click OK. And as usual, we'll get the welcome to there will be a prompt for us to provide credential. And after the credential, we should be good. So administrator, and then the password of the administrator. That is for the domain. So I'll click OK. And then we should see welcome to the maverick.com domain.
Yeah, please, I think I have a question.
You have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, please. The very first credential, is it always straight there?
It be a credential that is capable of authorizing access to the domain.
Okay, what
So
if maybe I work in a department, then maybe I have my own credential. So
but please speak up.
log into the trying to join the domain. Hello,
Uh-huh.
can you hear
Yeah, I
me
can
now?
hear you. Yes,
Yeah,
bro.
let's say I'm working in an organization and then I
Yeah.
have my own credential and
Okay.
then I'm trying to join the company's domain. Can I use my own credential to join?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Hello, Louis.
Yeah.
Lou,
Okay.
I don't know if I can add contribute to his question. I'm like, I think there's this security group that if your user account is part of the security group, then you can enroll to join a domain. So there's like
Other
another
users,
security,
yes, but if it's
yeah,
just a
group
user
in there,
on the
but
domain,
then you can't.
because it has, if not, then people will bring
I
their own
think
machines from home and come and join you to the domain.
Yeah.
Please, are we clear?
yes, please.
Yes.
As a common demo.
Oh, not my boss.
Okay, so it's restarting. So let me switch to the server and let's see what has happened there. Okay, so from here, when we come to the Active Directory and I go to computers, you can see that our computer is here, MVCY01. And I think one of the things that you would want to do is, because this user belongs to cyber, you want this computer to be cyber computer, you can move it to computers under cyber, and then automatically will be there. Some administrators also like to create the computer first. So they can right click computers and then go to new and then select computer. And then they'll create the name of the computer first
Okay.
before they actually, so in joining the machine to the domain, they will specify that this is the name you should use. But that one, you don't go to the process we use. There's another one, the network, you change the network type. I'm coming. Mostly that's what most administrators use, the long journey. So this time around, I'll select what? Other. And you can see that when I select other, it says what? Maverick, right? So I'll put credential the LGen fee and then put my password and then click go. So it says the user must change the password before signing in. Remember that when we were creating the users, one of the that was set was that user must change password at next logon. So you can see that here we want to change the password. So I'll just put in a new password. And then we'll just click go. So it is done. So password has been changed. So now that we have Active Directory and then all these running, and then we have now shared files. Once we have shared files, it means that certain protocols are also now in place. So let's give it a little time. And then once this is done, we'll see whether the user can access the files or not. And then we'll put one last icing on the cake. So Microsoft has a certain trick called ABE, access-based enumeration. So what the access-based enumeration does is that if you don't have access to a certain folder, you will not see the folder. So we'll make sure that our user can only see the folder that has been assigned to him. So the user in. And this is how you know you are in. Hello? Are you saying something?
No, sir.
All right. So this is how you know you are in the domain. You see all the things that we did simple, like we went to the network and sharing center, right? And then we went to change the DNS. Now you can't do that. Now when I come here and then I go to network and sharing center, if I want to change the IP and go to properties, this is how you know you are now in a domain. So by default, there are some policies in place that applies to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So maybe you can also decide that I'm going to remove myself from the domain if this is going to be a problem for me. And I think I have to walk you through how you can remove yourself from the domain. It's just the same way that some administrators use. So you come to change settings. So you can see that the machine name now is what? mv-cy01 dot the domain name. So when I come to change settings, you see now I can't do it. It has to be the administrator. But here, you see most administrators make this mistake. Mostly when, at least even the Louis account, I put a password on it. But most of the time when they provision the machine, the local account that comes on the machine, they don't put a password on it. And that account is an administrator account, that first account.
Yeah.
One of the things that you can do is you can just put a dot and backslash. And you notice that it changes to the, and then I can put Louis here. So what I'm doing is that I'm now logging directly onto the machine and not onto the domain. Do you see the difference? Before I put the backslash, look here, okay? If I clear everything, you see the domain is Maverick. But when I put the dot and then the backslash, I'm saying that I should use the local account. So I can use this local account to bypass the admin thing. That's if I remember the password I put on it. And say yes. And you see I'm in. So if you're an administrator, you need to make sure that the users cannot use the local accounts. You need to make sure that the users cannot use the local account. So instead of coming here, you rather go to what? Change network ID. So you can say this currently is telling you that this computer is part of what? A domain network. And so you can just say this computer is part of a home network. Click next, and then you move it from the domain. Yes, Richard.
Hello. So, Blue, I just wanted to make some contribution on this very local accounting. You know, there's like when it comes to system admin, it's very, very important to always change that password and keep it, because there's a point in time where the trust between the client and the domain, the DC might break. And when it breaks, you need to use that local account to de-join the client and rejoin the back. And that's the only way you can get a client to work. Sometimes it breaks. So you really need to make sure that that password, that local password, you have it somewhere, or else you'll be found hot power. Unless you probably, let's say, run the whole installation again.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
All right.
But the whole installation doesn't even spoil anything. I mean, if it's the domain environment and you plan good things like
Exactly. Exactly.
the user doesn't anything.
Yeah.
Thanks for that beautiful contribution. Charlie, you learn, no? My child.
OG.
Okay.
So I also want to share one experience. There was a time one white man came. His system was set in such a way that there was a lot of restrictions on his machines. So I tried to log him onto our network. It was requesting for an administrator's permission. We tried several. So unless he has to connect to, the administrator before he was able to get the credentials, before he was able to, So I think some of the restrictions, it helps. Probably they knew why they didn't allow him to be on any other network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once this is done, you have moved from your discretionary access control, where you control everything, to what we call mandatory access control. So here, the administrator is the de facto. Whatever It just specifies that is what works. That is what is. Yeah. All right. So now we are here. Okay, this user has logged in. That is good. And now we know he's on the domain and we can't do anything about it. Okay. So what I want to do is whenever you want to access a share, you have to use the path. Are we okay? So double backslash, the name of the server, DC1, and then you add another backslash. So when you add the next backslash, you will automatically share the shared folders for you. But these two are domain files that are used by the domain controllers for communication. So they are not really things that you want to meddle with. I don't even know if we can access it. Okay, yes, we can access it. But what can we see in it? The policies and then everything. Let me see if I can delete. It says you need permission. Are we okay? You need permission. So even though you can see it, but I don't think sometimes you can go and alter and then change. But I don't. The users just have read permissions to it. The users just have read permission to it. So let me bring back the path. It's not Sysvol I want to access. I want to access general. So I click OK. So general opens. Ooh, let me go and see what the finance people are up to. He says that you cannot access this because he's not from finance. Unless maybe I'm mistaken and I'm from finance and I didn't set the permissions on finance. If I come to HR, it's the same thing. When I go to IT, yes, he's from IT. So the IT opens. Now, which department in IT is he from? He's definitely not from applications. He's not from cyber. He's not from database either. So definitely he's from systems. So systems opens for him. So that is it. If you do this as an administrator, you've really done a good work to make sure that only people can only access what they need to access. And then once this is done, our permissions learning is over. So what the next thing I want to do is I just want to quickly show you the ABE and then we can bring this session to a close. Hopefully Sunday we'll start with the group policy. Group policy is a lot, so that long session on Sunday will help us cover the whole thing. So when you come to the server manager, we could have actually also done all the sharing from here under the file and storage services. Are we okay? We could have done the sharing from here. So you see, we have volumes, we have disk, we have storage, and then we have shares. So you can see that the general we created is here. And DC2 is off. So it's showing us that it has not been queried since it appeared offline. So once you look at this, and you can see the storage size that we have. And so what I want to do is when you come to task, we can create a new share. Are we okay? Or we can also look at the properties of this very share here. Are we okay? So you can right click and go to properties. And then we have what we call. So when you come to settings, there is this beautiful thing here called enable access-based enumeration. So when I check this, it says access-based enumeration displays only the files and folders that a user has permission to access. If a user does not have read or equivalent permission for a folder, Windows hides it from the person. You want to do this. You can also enable encryption, but then it will delay small. Are we okay when files are being transferred? But you can also enable encryption so that whatever is put in there is encrypted. So this can also be enabled. So I just click apply on the ABE and then click OK. That's all. So once this is done, when we go back to the client and then we probably refresh this or just close this and then open the share again. Oh, I think it will take a little time for it to take effect. But once it does, the files are going to be missing. Let me just sign out and sign back. And sometimes you just have to do that.
Hello, sir.
Yes, boss.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Please talk.
Yeah, please, the file sharing thing.
Is that?
Or it's a different thing altogether.
Until they all can.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm asking the file sharing, is it the same as mapping?
No, mapping is an aspect of file sharing. So when you are mapping, what you are doing is that I think we will just look at some little mapping here. Are we okay? So when you are mapping, what you are doing is that you want to make sure that when a user logs on, a particular drive is always available for that user. Are we okay? So instead of the person coming here all the time and then entering the path and then all that, you can decide to put the map for the person, but you should have shared the file before you map it to the person. And this is mainly done by administrators because users normally have issues entering the path. Are we okay? So basically you can see that all the folders are missing. And so when someone logs in, the person is only going to see IT and the person will think the only folder there is IT. The same way when somebody from finance logs in, the person is only going to see finance and the person will think that the only folder there is for finance. And when he logs in, he's only going to see systems. So he thinks the only folder there is for systems. So at least, I mean, the person doesn't see, so the person doesn't even try to access it in the first place. We good.
Yeah.
Any question, please? All right. If there is no question, I think we can bring the cruise to a halt this evening. We've done a lot.
Yeah, we've done a lot.
But then let me quickly show you last thing before we leave. So since he mentioned mapping, sometimes as an administrator, what you can do is you can decide that every user should have a location where they store their personal things. Are we okay? So for example, when I come to IT and I go to roles and I go to cyber, let me see the people who are members of cyber. So we have, so Luis is from systems, right? So let me go to systems instead. So we have Luis, so from Luis to RR Thomas. So I'll go to users here, and then I'll select from Luis to RR Thomas, okay? When I select this, I can go to properties, okay? And then I'll come to, I think, profile. And when I come to profile, we have what we call the home folder. So I can decide to put a path for them, okay? I can decide to put a path for them. So let me look at the path for the systems. And you see here, you don't have to make this mistake because if you put the E there, it will try to look for it on the drive E. Are we okay? So even though I'm copying this, I'll change the E to the server path and casa. And then I'll come here. Where are you? Come back here, properties, and then profile. So you see, when you select all of them, you can do a lot. You can restrict them to certain computers. But when I come to the profile and I go to home folder and I say connect, I can decide to use maybe a different drive. I'll say maybe T, and then put the path there, and then do double backslash DC1 backslash. Then I'll put is it backslash or forward slash? Let me put a backslash. If it doesn't, we'll go back to, and then do percentage username, and then what? Percentage. Now, what I'm saying here is that I want another folder to be created in the folder called systems for each of the users using their username, and it should be mapped to their account using the letter T. So when I click apply, it looks like nothing has happened, right? And then we click OK. But when I come here, and then you can see that a folder has been created for each of them. So you can see a folder for LGenFi, a folder for Ellie, and then R Rihanna, and then R Thomas. You can see a folder has been created for each of them. And what it means is that when I come back to the client, where are you? I come back to the client, I probably will have to log out and then log back in. So I sign out. All right. Once I sign out and then I come back in and I come here. When I go to this PC, you can see that a folder has been created for, a map drive has been created for him. So here he can put his personal stuff. But you can also do this through group policy using what we call folder redirection. Or you can do roaming profile. So this also works.
I can't wait for that.
All right. So this is also something that can be done. And then once you start introducing some of these things, you have to look at something we call FSRM, a File Server Resource Manager. And here you can set what we call quota management, and do file screening. Quota management, you can specify the storage size that each user is entitled to. And then we have the file screening. File screening, you can also specify what type of files can be stored on the systems. This is to ensure that if users decide that, okay, Charlie, we have, we are guilty, I'm going to confess, we do it in our office. And it's because you identified that vulnerability. I'm not a system administrator in my organization. And so the system administrators allows us to put video files and other things on the file share. So we put when we download movies, we share among ourselves. So at the end of the day, please, this thing, I have not mentioned it. The one recording, you have to crop this part out. Okay. But at the end of the day, you can actually specify what type of files can be put on the file share, and then specify notifications. So if somebody put a certain file type there, you'll be notified that someone is trying to put a certain file type there.
Wow.
But people are like that. Once you allow them to, but I don't think we'll
Yeah.
go far. Rules, I'm not going to take us to that aspect. If no, our class will drag.
Oh, no, no, no.
You have to teach us.
You have
Blue,
to teach us.
teach us.
And we
You have to
need
teach us
to
that one.
know.
Yeah,
And so that we have to
awesome.
control others. We have to learn it very well. When they ain't record, but they'll try and record.
No,
We'll keep it safe.
okay, one, no, I mean, the goal is to give you something so that when you are leaving, you live with something. So if there's something that, I mean, the class is saying that we should do,
Yeah.
then we'll look at that before we start the group policy on Sunday. So please remind me
Okay.
Sunday to touch on FSRM and then see how we can use that to control things.
Okay.
All right. So on that
Hello,
note,
sir.
yeah.
I think there is something that I saw at workplace that I would like to request if you can teach us that one too.
Okay.
It's like a laptop was used to connect into a domain using the remote desktop via
Okay.
a VPN.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Yes. So I don't know that if that one can be taught. Like if you can help
Want us
us
to
with
do
that.
VPN?
Pardon me.
Want us to do VPN?
Yes, it's like a server, a laptop was used to log into a domain,
Mm-hmm.
into a server. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
using a VPN.
Yeah, so it means that we'll have to set up VPN. But see, don't worry. I remember some years back, this thing came up. And so I I did all these things we are doing. You can actually come and look for me on YouTube here, and then you have everything there. But I don't want to market me on YouTube, okay? So
Okay.
I have a whole what's the name? And my VPN videos is actually one of my most watched videos. So I have a playlist and you can see VPN here. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So you can I actually talk about how to set up VPN right from scratch.
Today I'm going to
Okay.
change.
And
Okay.
so
I'll download it right away.
Guys, welcome back. This is
Alright.
Luis here once again. So in the previous videos, we looked at
this is one of my most watched videos. Yeah.
My 4K. Wow.
guys.
No, but there's another video that I have about almost 8K. And I'm like, hey, wow. So people they watch me like that.
You are trending.
All right. So for the VPN, in order not to, because if I'm going to tackle VPN, it means that I have to talk about MPS. I have to talk about active IP certificate services. And this will
Okay.
drag our
Yeah.
scope. And
Yeah.
like I said, remember October came my area.
It
But
was
the only
not
thing
was.
is that, with this, you get to ask questions and then we get to share ideas, even though people are not really asking questions, but then it's all good. And this has been there 7 years ago. Actually,
Wow.
yeah. So for the VPN, that is where I would want you to watch it. And if you have any challenge, you can reach out to me directly. Why?
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So if there is no further questions, thank you very much. And let's all thank my internet for today it didn't even blink.
Today, network has been very favorable.
Today it didn't even blink. So let's thank it. It has done it. I think it is angry because it has seen that I'm come to replace it. I actually got the fiber today, but they didn't put the data on it. So I'm waiting for them to
Okay.
put the data on it. Yeah.
Wow.
I got the fiber because of this guy here, VJ. That guy had audacity to send screenshots of how his internet is moving over 26 minutes per second. And mine was around 300 kilobits. Just
Oh,
look at
Charlie.
it. All the
Vijay,
same
report yourself. Vijay, you have a missed call.
And then he had the audacity to tell me to live in a better hood. This stage on Facebook, this one is better hood. I said, Charlie, guys, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Bye bye.
Right.
Okay. Thanks so much, sir.
I'll
Louis.
thank you for this video.
Yeah, Alvin. It's seriously recording, Charlie. Kudos, for your good job.
Okay, guys, bye.
Okay, bye, sir.